Whether Jesus is using a parable here to illustrate this thing that is talked about quite frequently, maybe he's just talking more directly about this place. Does it really make any difference at the end of the day? Because the subject matter is going to be the same. Luke 16, Jesus tells a parable about a rich man in hell who asks Abraham to send Lazarus to bring a drop of water. Is that meant to give an accurate display of afterlife, or was Jesus using an illustration? Yeah, there's a big debate in biblical scholarship whether Luke 16 is a parable or whether it's a story of real events, something like that. I don't know if it's a 50-50 split, but it might be 60 parable, 40 not parable. I mean, it's actually a pretty wide debate. I don't really know which one it is, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think it really matters, because let's just say it's a parable. Well, you've got plenty of other passages that aren't parables that describe the same, describe the negative afterlife. Let's just use that phrase. Hell, Hades, whatever. So you don't need Luke 16 for the idea. If it's not, then you get yet another description. It's cosmic geography. Again, heaven and hell, these terms that the biblical writers use, these are not places with latitude and longitude. So they are efforts on the part of the biblical writer to describe, a place of, everlasting wonderfulness, if that's a word, for the righteous, for those who are believers, and the exact opposite for those who are not. And since that place, let me just look at how we have to struggle to even talk about this. Just because that place that really isn't a literal place, again, it has no latitude and longitude. You couldn't journey there in the physical world, okay? But it's still, it's still a reality. And so for people who, like us and like the biblical writers who are embodied, who only know of a physical reality, they don't know what a disembodied reality is like. They have to use the language of physical embodiment to even try to describe this. And the descriptions aren't uniform. I mean, they're consistent with each other, but they're not uniform. I mean, what I mean by that is, if you go through the New Testament, if you gathered all of these, Luke 16 is going to be kind of unique with the drop of water thing, and referring to it as Abraham's bosom. Okay, the good side of it, with the great gulf fixed between the good side and the bad side. So that's pretty unique in biblical material, but biblical material will use other descriptions to describe the same afterlife condition. And it's not just, the negative one, it's also the positive one. So you don't get uniform descriptions. I wouldn't expect uniform descriptions. You're going to get a variety of descriptions that basically, in a nutshell, tell you want to be in this part, but you don't want to be in the other one. So, we're just sort of the writers and us too are locked into how do we describe this. And a lot of the writers will use, phrases that are common to their own audience, obviously. Again, we're trying to interpret things in the original context. And so you'll see descriptions like in Second Temple Jewish literature that sound very much like what you see in the New Testament. There's kind of a common pool of vocabulary in the Second Temple period from which writers can draw to talk about this or to attempt again to get the messaging across. This is the place you want to be. This is the place where you don't want to be. One is the realm of the dead. One isn't. One is, where God is. The other one is, a place of torment and so on and so forth. So whether Jesus is using a parable here to illustrate this thing that is talked about quite frequently, both in terms of Second Temple literature and elsewhere in the New Testament, maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's not a parable. Maybe he's just talking more directly about this place. Does it really make any difference at the end of the day? Because the subject matter is going to be the same, whether it's a parable or whether it's not. The subject matter is the same, and there are plenty of other passages that aren't parables, that aren't even in that discussion, that describe the same situation.